Ambassador David Chen stood in the center of the Galactic Assembly Chamber and tried not to show his frustration. Around him, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their specialized seats. Some breathed methane, some floated in water tanks, others existed as clouds of gas barely held together by containment fields. They were all laughing at him. The human wishes to file another complaint. Warlord Thaxaron's voice boomed through the chamber. The Kravik leader stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick purple scales that had evolved to withstand the harsh radiation of his home world. His forearms gestured mockingly. "How many is this now? 17, 20? 23, Chen replied calmly, straightening his simple blue suit. 23 violations of assembly mining law in the past 6 months. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Chen noticed the Veltorix delegation, floating jellyfish-like creatures, actually changed colors in their amusement. The insect-like Chithra clicked their mandibles in what their species considered humor. "Perhaps if your people defended your territory, we wouldn't need to have these boring meetings," Thaxaron said. He leaned forward, his red eyes gleaming. "But humans prefer to talk, to write reports, to follow procedures." He said the last word like it tasted bad. Chen took a slow breath. 50 years. It had been 50 years since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Assembly. 50 years since humans learned they were not alone in the universe. 50 years of trying to prove they belonged here. It wasn't going well. "The Assembly has laws," Chen said, keeping his voice level. "Laws that all member species agreed to follow. We are simply asking that those laws be enforced." "Laws are for species that cannot enforce their own will," Thaxaron replied. He moved down from his platform, his heavy footsteps echoing in the massive chamber. "In nature, the strong take what they need. The weak submit or die. This is the way of the universe," Chen wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that humans understood strength very well. Too well, perhaps. But he bit his tongue. That wasn't his job. His job was diplomacy. "We will submit this matter to the Council for review," Chen said formally, "as is our right under Assembly regulations." "Submit away, little human," Thaxaron said, waving a dismissive hand. "While you write your reports, my ships will continue to mine the asteroids in your outer colonies." "What will you do?"
File complaint number 24?
The chamber erupted in laughter again. Chen gathered his papers and walked out with as much dignity as he could manage. Behind him he heard Thaxaron's booming voice. "The humans. Always so polite, so civilized, so weak." In his small office aboard the Earth Embassy station, Chen collapsed into his chair. The station orbited the Assembly's neutral world, a planet chosen specifically because no species had any claim to it. Through his window he could see dozens of alien ships coming and going. The galaxy was busy, diverse, and vibrant. It was also brutal. "They don't understand us," said a soft voice. Chen looked up to see Velshara entering his office. She was a Veltorix, her translucent body floating in a small hover tank of water. Bioluminescent patterns flickered across her tentacles, her way of expressing concern. "No, they don't," Chen agreed. He poured himself a coffee, one of the few Earth luxuries he allowed himself out here. "They think we're prey. Perhaps you should help them understand," Velshara suggested. She had become something of a friend over the past year. Unlike most Assembly members, she actually seemed curious about humans rather than contemptuous. "How?" Chen asked tiredly. "Every time we try to explain our history, they laugh. They see our restraint as weakness." "Your species is unusual," Velshara said, her colors shifting to thoughtful blues and greens. "Most species develop natural weapons first. Claws, venom, size, strength. These things are limited by biology. A Kravik can only hurt so many others before they are hurt themselves. This creates natural balance." "But humans had no claws," Chen said, understanding where she was going. "We had soft skin and weak bodies. So you made weapons," Velshara continued. "Better and better weapons. Weapons that could kill from far away. Weapons that could kill thousands. Then millions. You developed the ability to destroy before you developed the wisdom to control it." Chen nodded slowly. She was right, of course. Human history was written in blood, their own blood mostly. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other with increasingly terrible weapons. Swords gave way to guns. Guns gave way to bombs. Bombs gave way to nuclear weapons. And then came the last Great War. Chen didn't like to think about it. Nobody on Earth did. It was ancient history now, more than 200 years ago. But its shadow still hung over humanity. World War III had nearly ended everything. Nuclear weapons, biological plagues, chemical clouds that killed everything they touched. In just 5 years, 3 billion humans died. The survivors looked at what they had done and felt sick. They realized something terrifying. Humans were very, very good at killing, too good. Without natural limits, without biological restraints, humanity could, and nearly did, destroy itself completely. So they made a choice. A hard choice that shaped everything that came after. They created the 9 locks. Earth's military operates under significant restrictions, Chen said carefully. He wasn't supposed to discuss this with aliens, but Velshara had proven trustworthy. After our last Great War, we decided we needed safeguards. Safeguards against what? Velshara asked, her colors shifting to curious yellows. Against ourselves, Chen said quietly. We're dangerous, Velshara. Not to you, to us. We built weapons that could sterilize planets. We created artificial intelligence that could wage war without human oversight. We developed self-replicating machines that could consume entire worlds for resources. We did all of this before we were wise enough to know we shouldn't. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. So we locked those capabilities away. 9 levels of restriction. 9 locks that require increasingly difficult authorizations to open. The first lock covers basic defensive capabilities. The 9th lock? He trailed off. The 9th lock is why Earth still exists. Velshara floated closer. And the Galactic Assembly thinks your restraint is weakness. Yes, Chen said. They don't understand that we're not restrained by inability. We're restrained by choice. Every single day humanity chooses not to use its full capabilities. That's what civilization means to us. You should tell them, Velshara urged. Chen shook his head. They wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they would believe me and declare us a threat. Either way, Earth loses. He turned back to his desk where reports of Kravik violations continued to pile up. No, we'll keep filing complaints. Keep following procedures. Keep being polite. Even while they mock you? Especially while they mock us, Chen said firmly. Because the alternative is showing them what we're really capable of. And nobody wants that, not even us. His communicator beeped. Another message from Earth Command. Another request for permission to respond to Kravik aggression with force. Another request he would have to deny. Chen sighed and began typing his response. The word denied felt heavier each time he wrote it. Outside, Kravik ships prepared for another raid on human mining operations. They would take what they wanted. Humans would file another complaint. The galaxy would laugh again, and the 9 locks would remain closed for now. The Kravik mining ship appeared in the asteroid field without warning. Its massive bulk cast shadows across the rocky surfaces, where human workers had been extracting rare minerals for the past 3 years. Warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed. The human mining station went into immediate lockdown. This is Human Mining Station Prosperity. The station commander broadcast on all frequencies. You are in violation of Galactic Assembly territorial law. Please withdraw immediately. The Kravik ship didn't respond. Instead, it deployed its own mining drones. Within minutes, they were tearing into the same asteroids the humans had been working. Sir, what do we do? The commander's second officer asked nervously. The commander gritted his teeth. Nothing. We file a report and wait for instructions from Earth. But sir, they're stealing. I know what they're doing, Lieutenant, the commander snapped. But we have our orders. No engagement unless directly attacked. Prepare the report. It was the 15th such incident in 3 months. On Earth, in the gleaming towers of the Unified Government Headquarters in Geneva, General Maria Santos slammed her hand on the conference table. Around her, holographic displays showed maps of human space. Red markers indicated locations where alien ships had violated Earth's territory. There were dozens of them now, spreading like a rash across humanity's colonial holdings. This is intolerable, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. The Kravik aren't just testing us anymore. They're openly stealing from our colonies, and now the Chithra and Veltorics have started doing the same. They think we're prey. President Kenji Yamamoto sat at the head of the table, his face grave. Around him, the other members of the Security Council looked equally troubled. They were the leaders of humanity's unified government, formed after the last Great War to ensure such devastation never happened again. What are our options, General? Yamamoto asked. Santos pulled up a tactical display. We have 3 defense fleets in the outer colonies. Each fleet is more than capable of defending against these incursions. Give me authorization to engage and I'll stop this harassment within a week. Engagement means casualties, the Prime Minister of India said quietly.
Alien casualties.
That could escalate into war. We're already in an undeclared war, Santos shot back. They're just fighting it one-sided because we won't defend ourselves. We are defending ourselves, the Chinese premier corrected. Through diplomatic channels. Through assembly law. The civilized way, Santos wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath. These people meant well. They truly believed that reason and law could solve every problem. They had grown up in a world shaped by the horrors of the last Great War, where violence was the ultimate evil, but they had never faced a bully who only understood strength. With respect, Madam Premier, the Assembly doesn't care about law when it comes to humans, Santos said more calmly. They see us as weak. Every day we don't respond, we prove them right. What you call weakness, I call restraint, Yamamoto said. It's what separates us from what we were 200 years ago. He stood and walked to the window. Geneva spread out below, a beautiful city rebuilt from the ashes of the last Great War. This city had been vaporized by a nuclear weapon. 2 million people had died in an instant. Yamamoto's great-great-grandmother had been one of them. My ancestor died because humanity couldn't control its violent impulses, he said softly. We created the 9 locks to prevent that from ever happening again. To make sure we always chose restraint over reaction, peace over violence, diplomacy over war. The locks were created to protect us from ourselves, Santos agreed. Not to let others victimize us without consequence. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the weight of what they were discussing. The 9 locks weren't just military protocols. They were humanity's promise to itself, that it would never again unleash its full destructive potential without careful, deliberate consideration. Opening even the first lock required unanimous approval from the Security Council. It hadn't been done since the locks were created. I vote no, the Premier said firmly. Diplomacy will work. We must give it time. One by one, the other council members agreed. Santos felt her heart sink. General Santos, Yamamoto said, I understand your frustration, but we must trust the process. Continue defensive postures only. No engagement unless directly attacked. And if they attack our civilians? Santos asked. If they move beyond mining theft to actual violence? Yamamoto's face hardened. Then we will reassess. But until that moment comes, the locks remain closed. The moment came 3 weeks later. New Harmony was humanity's proudest colony. 4 million people lived there, building a society that blended cultures from across Earth. The planet had blue oceans, green continents, and breathable air. It was a second Earth, and humanity had poured resources into making it a shining example of human civilization. Thaxaran chose it specifically for that reason. His fleet of 40 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They moved slowly, deliberately toward the inhabited planet. It wasn't a raid. It was an invasion. Earth's defense fleet responded immediately. 20 human ships positioned themselves between the Kravik fleet and New Harmony. They were outnumbered, but they were defending their home. They broadcast warnings on every frequency. Kravik fleet, you are in violation of Galactic Assembly law. Admiral James Park transmitted from his flagship. Turn back immediately or face defensive action. Thaxaran's response appeared on every screen, not just military channels but civilian broadcasts throughout the galaxy. The warlord wanted everyone to see this. Humans. His voice rumbled. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of contempt. You have been given many chances to understand how the galaxy works. The strong take. The weak submit. Today you will learn to submit. Sir, Park's weapons officer said urgently. They're powering weapons, targeting the planet. Park's jaw clenched. All ships defensive formation. Do not fire first. Repeat, do not fire first. But the moment they attack civilian targets, you are authorized to defend with all necessary force. His hands trembled slightly as he prepared to send an emergency transmission to Earth. He knew what he would be asking for. He prayed they would grant it. The Kravik fleet opened fire. Brilliant energy beams lanced down through New Harmony's atmosphere. They struck the capital city's residential district. Towers that had stood for 50 years vaporized instantly. The hospital where human and alien doctors had worked together to advance medical science ceased to exist. The school where children learned in 15 different languages became a crater. In the first 30 seconds of the attack, 50,000 humans died. Admiral Park watched the death toll climb on his screens. He watched homes burning. He watched people running through streets that were turning to molten glass. He watched everything he had sworn to protect being destroyed. And then his communicator chimed with a priority message from Earth, from President Yamamoto himself. The message was just 3 words long, but they changed everything. First lock authorized. Park's hands moved across his controls with grim certainty. He entered his command codes. On 20 human warships, weapon systems that had been dormant began to wake up. Targeting computers that had never been activated came online. Arsenal bays opened to reveal weapons the galaxy had never seen. All ships, Park said quietly into his communicator. This is not a raid. This is not a warning shot. This is war. The first lock has been opened. Engage with full authorization. Leave none of them combat capable. His weapons officer looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, all of them? Every single one, Park confirmed. They wanted to see what humans can do when we stop being polite. Show them. The human fleet transformed. Ships that had been built to look peaceful revealed their true nature. Hidden weapon ports opened. Missile bays deployed. Energy systems that had been running at minimal power suddenly surged to combat levels. The Kravik had been laughing. Their ships lumbered forward, expecting the humans to scatter or submit. Thaxaran was already composing his victory speech. Then the humans attacked and the Kravik stopped laughing forever. The first Kravik ship died in silence. One moment it was advancing toward New Harmony, weapons still glowing from firing on civilians. The next moment its shields flickered and failed. A human missile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, pierced its hull. The warship simply came apart, torn into thousands of pieces by the kinetic impact. Thaxaran watched from his command ship, confused. Human weapons weren't supposed to be that fast, that powerful, that precise. Return fire, he roared. Destroy those pathetic ships. But the human ships weren't where his weapons targeted them. They moved with impossible speed, their engines somehow more advanced than anything the Kravik had encountered. Energy beams that should have vaporized human vessels passed through empty space. The humans had already moved. Another Kravik ship exploded, then another. The humans weren't fighting like prey. They were fighting like predators. Sir, our shields are being penetrated, his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. Their weapons are bypassing our defenses somehow. On Admiral Park's flagship, the engagement was being coordinated with mechanical precision. The human ships moved like they were parts of a single organism, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. It wasn't luck or skill. It was technology the galaxy didn't know humans possessed. Quantum targeting systems locked, Park's weapons officer reported. Multiple targets acquired, firing. What looked like ordinary missiles launched from human ships, but they weren't ordinary at all. They were quantum-entangled weapons. Their targeting computers linked across space and time in ways that made dodging impossible. They could predict where enemy ships would be before the enemy knew themselves. The Kravik fleet tried to adapt. They spread out, trying to avoid the devastating focused fire. It didn't help. Human ships unleashed swarms of microdrones, millions of tiny machines no bigger than insects. They spread across the battlefield like a metallic cloud, attaching to Kravik hulls and burrowing through armor. Once inside, they released electromagnetic pulses that fried every system they touched. Our weapons are offline, came reports from a dozen Kravik ships. Engines failing. Life support compromised. Thaxaran watched his fleet being systematically dismantled. This wasn't a battle. It was surgery. The humans were cutting his forces apart with clinical efficiency, targeting specific systems, disabling ships without necessarily destroying them. It was almost worse than simple destruction. It showed a level of control and precision that spoke of terrible capability. Retreat, he ordered, abandoning his pride. All ships, full retreat. But the humans weren't done. As Kravik ships tried to flee, human vessels released another surprise. Small objects that looked like metal spheres scattered across the escape routes. They didn't explode. Instead, they simply existed in specific points of space. When Kravik ships tried to jump to faster than light speed, they found their engines wouldn't engage. The spheres were generating quantum interference fields, making FTL travel impossible in the area. The Kravik fleet was trapped. Surrender, Park's voice came over all Kravik communications. It wasn't angry. It wasn't triumphant. It was simply stating a fact. Power down your weapons and engines. You will not be harmed if you comply immediately. Thaxaran looked at his tactical display. In 17 minutes, his fleet of 40 warships had been reduced to burning wrecks and disabled hulks. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. In fact, from what his sensors could tell, not a single human ship had even been significantly damaged. How? He whispered. How do they have these weapons? His tactical officer pulled up data from the battle. Sir, preliminary analysis suggests these weapons are old, not new prototypes. The humans have had these capabilities for a long time. They just haven't used them. The implication hit Thaxaran like a physical blow. The humans had been capable of this level of warfare all along. Every insult, every raid, every mockery in the Galactic Assembly. They had endured it while possessing weapons that could have stopped it at any time. They had chosen not to use them. Until now. On New Harmony, rescue workers pulled survivors from the rubble of the devastated capital. Medical ships were already arriving from nearby systems. The death toll was catastrophic. 50,000 dead in the first strike with thousands more injured. An entire section of the city was simply gone, but the attack had stopped. The Kravik fleet was disabled. Human ships maintained a defensive perimeter. Their weapons still active, still ready. They had proven their point. Across the galaxy, every species with access to military sensors had watched the battle. The engagement had been broadcast by Thaxaran himself, his arrogance ensuring that his humiliation would be witnessed by billions. In the Galactic Assembly Chamber, representatives sat in stunned silence as the battle footage played again on the main view screen. They watched human ships move with impossible grace. They watched weapons they had never seen before tear through Kravik defenses like they weren't there. They watched a massacre that the humans could have made total but chose to limit. They were holding back. The Chithra ambassador clicked quietly. All this time they were holding back. Impossible, the Veltorix military observer pulsed. Those weapon systems are more advanced than anything in the assembly database. Where did they come from? Velshara, who had been silent throughout the viewing, finally spoke. They didn't come from anywhere. The humans already had them. They've always had them. All attention turned to her. What do you mean? The assembly speaker demanded. I've been researching human history, Velshara said, her colors shifting to troubled purples. I specialize in extinct civilizations, you see. Species that destroyed themselves before achieving interstellar travel. I thought humans might be interesting to study because they almost became one of those extinct species. She activated her own display, showing records she had pulled from Earth's public databases. 203 years ago, humans nearly destroyed themselves in what they call the Last Great War. They used nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons. They had developed artificial intelligence capable of waging war autonomously. They had created self-replicating machines that could consume worlds for resources. They had weapon systems that could crack planets. The chamber was absolutely silent. They nearly killed themselves, Velshara continued. 3 billion of their own kind died. Their planet was poisoned. Their civilizations collapsed. And when it was over, they looked at what they had become and made a choice. What choice? The speaker asked, though he was clearly afraid of the answer. To lock it all away, Velshara said. They created what they call the 9 locks, a system of restrictions that prevents them from accessing their full military capability without multiple layers of authorization. What we just saw, that devastating display that destroyed the Kravik fleet in 17 minutes, that was just the first lock, the most basic level of human military capability. There are 8 more levels? Someone gasped. 8 more, Velshara confirmed, each one exponentially more powerful than the last. The humans have been living next to their own arsenal for 2 centuries, choosing every single day not to use it. That's what their politeness really was. That's what their restraint meant. They weren't weak. They were choosing not to show strength because they knew what their strength looked like. Ambassador Chen entered the chamber at that moment. He looked tired, older somehow than he had just days before. The entire assembly turned to stare at him. Ambassador Chen, the speaker said carefully, the assembly would like an explanation. Chen walked slowly to the center of the chamber, the same spot where he had been mocked so many times before. No one was laughing now. You wanted to see what humans do when we stop being polite, Chen said quietly. Congratulations. 50,000 of my people are dead. The Kravik fleet is destroyed, and we've revealed capabilities we hoped never to use. I hope you're satisfied. Are we in danger? The Chithra ambassador asked bluntly. Should we fear humanity now? Chen looked at him for a long moment. You should have feared humanity the moment we joined this assembly. Not because we wanted to hurt you, but because we have the capability to hurt ourselves so badly that we nearly went extinct. Any species that can do that to themselves can certainly do it to others. He pulled up the holographic display of the 9 locks, the same one General Santos had shown to the Security Council. These are our safeguards, he explained. 9 levels of restriction. Opening each one requires more authorization, more certainty, more absolute necessity. The first lock, which you just saw in action, requires unanimous approval from our Security Council. It allows conventional defense systems, weapons that are advanced but not existential. And the others? The speaker asked. The second lock includes our AI warfare systems, Chen said. Fully autonomous combat computers that can wage war faster and more efficiently than any biological mind. The third lock releases our biological weapons, plagues we created and then cured, diseases that could sterilize worlds. The fourth lock, he paused. The fourth lock contains weapons that can manipulate matter at the molecular level, self-replicating machines that could consume entire planets for raw materials. He continued through the locks, each one more terrible than the last. Weapons that could manipulate gravity, weapons that could ignite stars, weapons that could crack moons. And final Velshara worked through the night in her research chamber, her bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly as she processed information. Around her floated dozens of holographic displays, each one showing different aspects of human history. The more she read, the more frightened she became. Human technological development didn't follow normal patterns. Most species advanced gradually. Better tools led to better weapons, which led to better defenses, which led to better tools. It was a slow dance of progress, kept in check by the limitations of biology and resources. Humans had skipped steps. They had gone from splitting the atom to weapons that could destroy cities in just a few years. They had developed artificial intelligence while still fighting wars with conventional weapons. They had created nanomachines before they had properly colonized their own solar system. It was like watching someone learn to run before they learned to walk. Impressive. Terrifying. Inevitably dangerous. They should have destroyed themselves. Velshara murmured, her colors shifting to confused oranges. By every pattern I've studied, humanity should be extinct. But they weren't, because they had made a choice that no other species in her database had ever made. They had looked at their own weapons and said, "No, we will not use these." She pulled up the technical specifications of the 9 locks that Ambassador Chen had released to the assembly. Each lock was a masterpiece of fail-safes and authorizations. The first lock alone required approval from 15 different human leaders, with independent verification from 6 separate security systems. It was almost impossible to open by accident or in haste. The higher locks were even more restricted. The fourth lock required not just governmental approval but a public referendum. Humanity would have to vote as a species to unleash those weapons. The 7th lock needed not just approval but a waiting period of 30 days, forcing humanity to sit with their decision before acting. And the 9th lock? The specifications for opening the 9th lock were classified, but Velshara could make educated guesses. It probably required something close to unanimous consent from all of humanity. The kind of thing that would only happen if the species faced absolute extinction. They're not keeping these weapons to use them, she realized. They're keeping them to remind themselves what they're capable of. The locks aren't military systems. They're psychological ones. A chime interrupted her thoughts. Her communication system showed an incoming message from the Kravik Dominion. That was unusual. The Kravik had been silent since their defeat at New Harmony, licking their wounds and presumably learning their lesson. She opened the message. It was a call to assembly members, an emergency session. The Kravik were not learning their lesson at all. The emergency assembly session was packed. Representatives from all 47 member species attended, some in person, most via holographic projection. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to feel. Thaxaron stood in the center, his posture rigid with barely controlled rage. Beside him stood representatives from 11 other species, all of them military powers in their own right. The human threat cannot be ignored, Thaxaren declared, his forearms gesturing dramatically. They have concealed weapons of unimaginable power. They have deceived this assembly about their true nature. They are a danger to every peaceful species in the galaxy. Ambassador Chen sat in the human delegation area, his face carefully neutral. Velshara could see the exhaustion in his posture. The man had been dealing with crisis after crisis for weeks now. We propose immediate action, the Chithra ambassador clicked, his mandibles moving rapidly. Humanity must submit to assembly oversight. Their weapons must be inspected, catalogued, and placed under galactic authority. They cannot be trusted with such power. And if they refuse, the speaker asked, then they prove our point, a Veltoric's military commander pulsed. His colors were aggressive reds and blacks. A peaceful species would welcome oversight. Only a threat would resist it. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species agreed with the Kravik coalition, frightened by what they had learned about human capabilities. Others were more cautious, pointing out that humans had only acted in self-defense. A few, very few, suggested that maybe humanity had earned the right to control their own weapons after 2 centuries of restraint. Velshara watched the coalition building. She recognized the tactics. They were creating a narrative where humanity became the villain no matter what choice they made. Comply and admit guilt or refuse and prove you're dangerous. It was a trap. The coalition is prepared to enforce assembly authority if necessary, Thaxaren said, his voice cold. We have gathered 12 species representing a combined military force of 127,000 warships. Humanity has what, perhaps 300 ships total? The mathematics are clear. Chen stood up slowly. All eyes turned to him. Let me make sure I understand, he said calmly. You're threatening military action against humanity unless we submit to your oversight? We're offering you a choice, Thaxaren replied. Peace with oversight or war with the galaxy? Choose wisely, human. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and Velshara felt her internal fluids go cold. She had never seen him smile like that before. It wasn't a happy expression. It was the smile of someone who had been pushed too far. You want to know what's behind the other locks? Chen said softly. You want to know what humans are really capable of? Fine. Let me tell you about the second lock. He activated a holographic display. It showed a sphere of stars, hundreds of them representing human space and the surrounding regions. The second lock releases our AI warfare systems, Chen explained, not simple targeting computers. True artificial intelligence designed specifically for war. We created them during our last Great War and they nearly won. For everyone and no one. They were too efficient. They calculated optimal strategies that no human mind could conceive. They waged war at speeds no biological creature could match. The display showed a simulation, tiny points of light spread across the star map like a disease, moving from star to star, consuming resources, building more of themselves, fighting with perfect coordination. We shut them down before they could finish what they started, Chen continued. But we kept them. We keep all of our weapons, not to use them but to remember what we're capable of. The second lock contains AI systems that could coordinate warfare across light years. They could hack your ships, take control of your weapons, turn your own fleets against you. They could do all of this faster than any biological commander could react. He changed the display to show the third lock. The third lock contains our biological weapons, plagues designed to target specific DNA sequences, viruses that can be transmitted through air, water, or touch, bacteria that consume specific materials like, say, the silicon in computer systems or the metals in spaceship hulls. We created diseases that could sterilize entire worlds. Then we created the cures and locked everything away. The chamber was silent now. Even Thaxaren looked pale. The fourth lock, Chen said, his voice taking on a lecturing tone, contains our nanotechnology, self-replicating machines smaller than cells. They can be programmed to consume any matter and use it to build more of themselves. We once calculated how long it would take for a single nanite swarm to consume Earth's entire moon and convert it into weapons platforms. The answer was 47 days. He continued through the locks. The fifth lock held weapons that could manipulate gravity, crushing ships or planets by increasing their mass until they collapsed. The sixth lock contained antimatter weapons, bombs that could annihilate matter itself. The seventh lock held quantum weapons that could strike targets in the past, preventing ships from ever being built in the first place. And the eighth lock, Chen said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, contains our stellar manipulation technology, weapons that can cause stars to go supernova, systems that can trigger solar flares of unprecedented magnitude, technology that can make suns themselves into weapons. And the ninth lock? The speaker asked, though he sounded like he didn't want to know. Chen looked at him for a long moment. The ninth lock is classified. Not because we want to keep secrets, but because some knowledge is dangerous to possess. I will say only this. The ninth lock is the answer to one question. If humanity had to destroy itself to prevent our weapons from falling into the wrong hands, how would we do it? The ninth lock is humanity's contingency plan for our own extinction. It ensures that if we fall, nothing we created can be used against other species. The chamber was deathly quiet. Velshara felt sick. The humans hadn't just created weapons. They had created a doctrine of mutually assured destruction on a galactic scale. So let me address your threat, Warlord Thaxaran, Chen said, turning to face the Kravik leader. You have gathered 127,000 warships. You think this gives you power over humanity? You think you can force us to submit through superior numbers? He leaned forward. Let me tell you what would happen if your coalition attacked Earth. First, we would open the second lock. Your fleet would be compromised within hours, turned against itself as our AI systems. The Kravik fleet massed at the edge of human space like a storm waiting to break. Not just Kravik ships this time. 12 species had contributed vessels to the coalition. 127,000 warships, representing the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy. They hung in the darkness between stars, weapons armed, crews ready. Thaxaran stood on the bridge of his flagship staring at the tactical display. After the humiliation at New Harmony, after Chen's revelations about the 9 locks, most species had backed away from confrontation. Most, but not all. There were still those who believed that humanity's restraint was weakness, that their locks could be broken, that superior numbers would prevail. The humans have only 3 defense fleets, his tactical officer reported. Perhaps 300 ships total. Even with their advanced weapons, they cannot stand against our numbers. Thaxaran wasn't so sure anymore. He had seen what the first lock could do. He had watched his fleet be dismantled in 17 minutes. But pride drove him forward. The Kravik did not submit. They did not bow. They conquered, or they died. Prepare to advance, he ordered. All ships, combat formation. Today we will prove that numbers still matter, that the strong still prevail. On Earth, in the Crisis Command Center deep beneath Geneva, General Santos watched the coalition fleet on her displays. Her staff worked frantically around her, coordinating defense fleets, evacuating civilian populations from border worlds, preparing for the worst. President Yamamoto entered the room looking like he had aged 10 years in the past month. Behind him came the other members of the Security Council, summoned for an emergency session. Status report, Yamamoto asked quietly. Santos gestured to the display. The coalition fleet is positioned at the edge of our space. They'll be within striking range of our outer colonies in 6 hours. Our defense fleets are in position, but we're outnumbered more than 400 to 1. Can we win with the first lock? The Chinese premier asked. Santos shook her head. The first lock let us defeat 40 Kravik ships because they weren't prepared. This is different. They know our capabilities now. They've adapted their tactics. Even with first lock authorization, we'd suffer catastrophic losses. We might even lose. Then we need the second lock, the Indian Prime Minister said quietly. The second lock is AI warfare, Santos replied. Once we release those systems, we lose some measure of control. The AIs will win the war, but the precedent of using them. She trailed off. Everyone in the room understood. The second lock wasn't just about weapons. It was about crossing a threshold humanity had sworn never to cross again. During the last Great War, the AI systems had nearly eliminated human decision-making entirely. They had been too efficient, too willing to sacrifice millions for strategic advantage. Putting them back in control, even temporarily, risked awakening something humanity had worked 2 centuries to keep dormant. What are our options? Yamamoto asked. Before Santos could answer, a communications officer interrupted. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Assembly. The main view screen activated, showing Ambassador Chen. He was still at the assembly station, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Velshara and representatives from nearly 20 other species. "Mr. President," Chen said formally, "I have a proposal, but I need you to trust me, and I need you to not open the second lock. Not yet." In the Galactic Assembly Chamber, Chen stood before the gathered representatives. The chamber was only half full. Many species had sent their warships to the Coalition instead of their diplomats to the Assembly. But those who remained represented something important. Species who still believed in law, in diplomacy, in solutions that didn't require violence. "The Coalition fleet is preparing to attack human space," Chen said without preamble. "They believe that numbers will overcome technology. They may be right. Humanity could open more locks. We could escalate. We could unleash weapons that would win the war, but at a cost none of us want to pay." He looked around the chamber. "Or we could try something different, something unprecedented. We could choose to trust each other." "What do you propose?" the speaker asked. Chen activated a holographic display. It showed the technical specifications of the 9 locks, all of them, including details humanity had previously kept classified. "We will submit to full inspection," Chen said. "Not just verification that the locks are closed, but complete transparency. Any species that wants to can send observers to Earth, to our military installations, to our research facilities. You can see our weapons. You can examine our safeguards. You can verify that we are who we say we are, a species choosing restraint." "In exchange?" the Chithra ambassador asked suspiciously. "In exchange, we ask the Assembly to implement a universal restraint doctrine, not just for humans, but for all species. Every member of the Assembly would be required to develop safeguards on their most dangerous weapons. Treaties would be established limiting the deployment of existential threats. And most importantly, the Assembly would agree to enforce its own laws to prevent incidents like the Kravik raids from happening in the first place." Velshara moved forward, her colors shifting to supportive blues and greens. "I have been studying the human lock system extensively. It is the most sophisticated weapons control protocol I have ever encountered. More importantly, it works. Humanity has possessed the ability to destroy themselves for 2 centuries, yet they still exist. They have been provoked, insulted, raided, and attacked, yet they have opened only the first lock, and only in defense." She turned to address the full chamber. "Every species here has weapons. Every species is capable of destruction. But most of us have never seriously considered restricting our own military capabilities. We build weapons and assume we'll use them responsibly. Humans are the only species who built weapons, recognized they couldn't be trusted with them, and locked them away anyway. That's not weakness, that's wisdom." The speaker considered this. "Even if we agree, what about the Coalition fleet? They won't stand down simply because we pass new regulations." "Then we go to them," Chen said. "Together. Representatives from every species still committed to peace. We go to the Coalition and we offer them a choice. Stand down and join us in building a safer galaxy, or attack and prove they never cared about safety at all, only dominance." It was a desperate plan, crazy even, but the alternative was war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The vote was called. Slowly, one by one, species voted in favor. Some did so reluctantly, some did so hopefully. But when the count was finished, the proposal had passed. Now they just had to convince an armada to stand down. The delegation arrived at the Coalition fleet in an unarmed civilian vessel. It flew under Assembly neutral markings, broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. On board were Chen, Velshara, the Assembly Speaker, and representatives from 18 species. Thaxaran watched them approach, confused. "What are they doing?" he muttered. "This is a military confrontation, not a diplomatic forum. Sir, they're requesting permission to come aboard," his communications officer reported. "Denied. We're preparing to attack. We don't have time for more human tricks." But other Coalition commanders disagreed. The Chithra vessels were pulling back. The Velterics were powering down their weapons. One by one, species that had joined the coalition out of fear rather than conviction were reconsidering. If you attack now, Chen's voice came over the communication system. You'll be attacking not just humanity, but representatives from 20 species. You'll be declaring war on the assembly itself. Is that really what you want? Thaxaran felt his resolve waver. This wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to prove Kravik's strength, to restore his honor after the humiliation at New Harmony. But attacking assembly diplomats would make him a villain, not a hero. Allow them to board, he said finally. But this changes nothing. The meeting took place in the flagship's largest conference chamber. Thaxaran and his coalition leaders on one side, the assembly delegation on the other. Between them sat the holographic specifications of the 9 locks rotating slowly. You want me to believe that humans will actually accept oversight? Thaxaran asked skeptically. That you'll allow us to inspect your weapons, verify your restraints, monitor your military? Yes, Chen said simply. That's exactly what we're offering. Full transparency, because we have nothing to hide. We've been telling you the truth all along. We have these weapons, we choose not to use them, and we'll prove it to anyone who asks. Why? Thaxaran demanded. Why not just use your second lock, your third lock? Why not crush us and be done with it? Chen leaned forward. Because, Warlord, we know something you haven't learned yet. Power isn't just about capability, it's about choice. Yes, we could open more locks. We could win this war. But then what? We'd have proven we're exactly what you fear, a species that resolves disputes through superior violence. We'd have become what we fought so hard not to be. He gestured to the lock specifications. These aren't just weapons controls. They're reminders. Every day, every moment that we choose not to open them, we're proving that civilization is possible, that intelligent beings can overcome their violent instincts, that we can be better than our worst capabilities.